I discovered the truth at 2:15 in the morning on a Tuesday in March, standing in my backyard in Phoenix, Arizona, wearing nothing but boxer shorts and holding a flashlight that was barely clinging to life. My name is Derek Thompson, and I have lived in the Saguaro Springs community for 3 years. It is a decent neighborhood with Spanish-style homes, manicured lawns, and an HOA that had recently transformed from mildly annoying to absolutely tyrannical. The shift happened about 6 months ago when Patricia Whitmore took over as president. Patricia embodied every stereotype of a middle-aged HOA tyrant, complete with the blonde highlights, the perpetually pursed lips, and an iPhone that she wielded like a weapon to document every perceived violation in the neighborhood. The nightmare started small. First, it was a warning about my garbage cans being visible from the street 15 minutes past the 7 a.m. pickup time. Then came the citation for my lawn being a quarter-inch too tall according to their standards. After that, they complained about the color of my front door, claiming the terracotta shade I had chosen was not on the approved list, even though I had the approval email from the previous board saved in my files. But the utility bills were what pushed me over the edge. 3 months ago, my water bill doubled. The next month, it tripled. My electricity costs went through the roof despite me being more conscious than ever about my usage. I worked from home as a software developer, and my habits had not changed. I still kept the thermostat at 78 degrees, still did laundry twice a week, still took the same length showers. Nothing in my routine had shifted, yet according to the meters, I was suddenly using water and electricity like I was running a small resort. I called the utility companies repeatedly. They sent technicians who checked everything and found no leaks, no electrical issues, nothing that would explain the astronomical readings. The meters were functioning properly, they said. The numbers were accurate, they claimed. I owed the money. Then came the letter from Patricia and the HOA board. It arrived on a Monday, printed on expensive cream-colored cardstock with the neighborhood logo embossed at the top. The letter stated that, due to my excessive utility usage, which violated the community's commitment to environmental responsibility outlined in Section 14.7 of the CC and Articles, I was being fined $500 per month until my consumption returned to acceptable levels. Furthermore, if the issue was not resolved within 90 days, they would pursue legal action to force me to sell my home and leave the community. I read that letter 5 times, my anger building with each pass. The CC and Rs, those covenants, conditions, and restrictions that governed our neighborhood, were thick as a phone book and written in dense legal language. I had read them when I bought the house, but like most people, I had not memorized every clause. I pulled out my copy and searched for Section 14.7. It existed, technically. It was a vague paragraph about residents being encouraged to practice water and energy conservation, but it said nothing about fines or forced sales. Patricia was interpreting and expanding the rules to suit her agenda. I decided to fight back. I hired a lawyer, Gerald Martinez, who specialized in HOA disputes. He was a stocky man in his 50s with silver hair and a reputation for not backing down. His office in downtown Phoenix was filled with plaques and certificates, and when I showed him the letter, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "They are reaching," he said. "This section does not give them the authority to fine you for utility usage, and they certainly cannot force a sale based on this. But the bigger question is why your bills are so high in the first place. Have you considered that something else might be going on?" "Like what?" I asked. "Like someone artificially inflating your usage to create a problem that gives them leverage," he said. The suggestion seemed absurd at first. How would someone even do that? But Gerald explained that utility meters, especially older models, could be tampered with. Someone with the right knowledge and tools could manipulate the readings. It was fraud, it was illegal, but it was possible. You need evidence, Gerald said. If the HOA is behind this, you need to catch them in the act. Set up cameras, monitor your meters, document everything. I left his office with a plan. That afternoon, I ordered 3 outdoor security cameras with night vision and motion detection. They arrived 2 days later, and I spent an evening installing them. One pointed at my electric meter on the side of the house, one at the water meter in the front yard near the sidewalk, and one covering the back gate, where someone could potentially access my property without being seen from the street. For 2 weeks, nothing unusual appeared on the footage. I watched hours of recordings showing nothing but occasional rabbits, a stray cat, and the mailman making his rounds. My bills remained outrageously high. The HOA sent another letter, this one more threatening, stating that I was now 45 days into my 90-day warning period. Then came that Tuesday morning when everything changed. I woke up at 2:15 because I had drunk too much water before bed. Stumbling toward the bathroom, I happened to glance out my bedroom window and saw a flash of light near the side of my house where the electric meter was located. It was brief, like someone using a phone or a small flashlight. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my own flashlight from the nightstand and headed toward the back door as quietly as possible. I did not bother with clothes beyond my boxers because I did not want to waste time. If someone was messing with my meter, I needed to catch them now. The March desert night was cool against my skin as I stepped onto the patio. I kept my flashlight off and moved along the side of the house, my bare feet silent on the concrete. As I rounded the corner, I heard voices, low and urgent. "Hurry up, the neighbors might have cameras," a woman whispered. I recognized that voice. "Patricia." "I am going as fast as I can. This model is tricky," a man responded. I did not recognize him. I fumbled with my phone, turning on the camera and starting a video recording before I flicked on my flashlight. The beam caught them both frozen in place. Patricia Whitmore stood there in dark jeans and a black jacket, her blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. Next to her was a thin man in his 40s wearing a utility company vest, holding some kind of electronic device connected to my electric meter by several wires. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. Patricia's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, anger, fear, and then a forced calm. "Derek, this is not what it looks like. Really." "Because it looks like you are tampering with my electric meter at 2 in the morning, I said, keeping my phone camera pointed directly at them. "Who is your friend?" The man yanked the wires from the meter and started backing away. "I am leaving. This is not worth it." "Stop right there," I said, but he was already running toward the front of the house. I heard a car door slam and an engine start. He was gone. Patricia remained, apparently deciding that running would make her look more guilty. She straightened her jacket and lifted her chin. "You are making a huge mistake. That man was a utility technician checking for irregularities in your meter. We received complaints about your excessive usage affecting the neighborhood's overall rates. At 2:15 in the morning, without notice, without my permission." I kept the camera rolling. "Try again, Patricia. I do not have to explain myself to you. I am the HOA president and I have the authority to investigate violations," she said, her voice rising. "You have the authority to commit fraud, to break into my property and tamper with my utilities." I took a step closer. "I have had cameras recording everything for 2 weeks. I have footage of you and your buddy. And I am guessing if I check the previous weeks, I will find more visits. This is why my bills have been so high. You have been inflating my meter readings to justify your harassment." Patricia's face paled in the flashlight beam. "You cannot prove anything." "Actually, I can. I have video of you right now, connected to my meter with some kind of device. I have your voice admitting you are involved. And I am betting that guy you were with will talk to the police once he realizes he is facing serious charges." I was bluffing about the last part, but she did not need to know that. She started backing away toward the front yard. "The board will hear about this. We will file a restraining order." "You are harassing me." "Go ahead." "I am calling the police right now," I said, and I meant it. Patricia turned and walked quickly to a black Mercedes parked 2 houses down. I watched her drive away, then I immediately went inside and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered, and I explained the situation as calmly as I could. A break-in, tampering with utility meters, possible fraud. She said officers were on their way. While I waited, I checked my security camera footage on my laptop. Sure enough, the cameras had captured Patricia and the unknown man approaching my electric meter. The angle was not perfect, but it clearly showed them connecting something to the meter housing. I saved the files to 3 different locations: my computer, an external drive, and cloud storage. I was not taking any chances. 2 Phoenix police officers arrived within 20 minutes. They were professional and thorough, taking my statement while reviewing the video footage I had just captured on my phone. I showed them the security camera recordings as well. The older officer, whose name tag read Ramirez, nodded slowly as he watched. "This is utility fraud," he said. "That is a serious crime. Do you know who the woman is?" "Patricia Whitmore." "She is the president of our HOA," I said. "She has been harassing me for months, and my utility bills have been through the roof. I think she has been manipulating the meters to inflate my usage so she can fine me and eventually force me out of my house." The younger officer, Martinez, raised an eyebrow. "That is elaborate. Why would an HOA president go to that length?" I explained the escalating citations, the threatening letters, the fines based on questionable interpretations of the CC and Articus. As I talked, I could see them beginning to understand the bigger picture. "We will need copies of all your footage," Ramirez said, "and we will need to contact the utility companies to have them inspect your meters. If they have been tampered with, that is evidence. We will also need to identify and locate the man who was with her." I provided everything they asked for. They took photos of my meters, collected my contact information, and said a detective would follow up within a few days. After they left, I sat in my living room as the adrenaline slowly faded, replaced by exhaustion and a strange sense of satisfaction. I had caught them. I had evidence. Now I just needed to see it through. I did not sleep the rest of that night. Instead, I sent an email to Gerald Martinez with the video files attached and a detailed account of what had happened. I also sent copies to myself at 3 different email addresses, just to be absolutely certain I would not lose the evidence. The sun was rising when I finally allowed myself to lie down on the couch. I managed about 2 hours of restless sleep before my phone started ringing. It was Gerald. "I saw your email. This is exactly what we needed," he said, his voice energized. "With this evidence, we can pursue criminal charges against Patricia and whoever that technician was. We can also sue the HOA for harassment, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "How are you holding up?" "I am tired, but I am good," I said. "What happens next?" "Let the police investigation run its course. In the meantime, I am going to file an emergency injunction to stop the HOA from taking any further action against you." We will also demand they reverse all fines and withdraw their threats. And Derek, do not talk to anyone from the HOA without me present. They are going to come after you hard once they realize what is happening." He was right. By noon, I had 7 missed calls from a number I did not recognize and 3 emails from different board members requesting an emergency meeting to discuss a serious matter. I ignored them all and forwarded everything to Gerald. The next morning, a detective named Sarah Chen called me. She was with the fraud division and had been assigned to my case. She wanted to meet in person to go over everything in detail. We arranged to meet at my house that afternoon. Detective Chen was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. She arrived with another officer who specialized in utility fraud. They spent 2 hours examining my meters, reviewing all of my security footage, and taking my full statement. I told them everything, starting from when Patricia took over as HOA president to the night I caught her at my meter. "Your electric meter has definitely been tampered with," the utility fraud specialist, Officer Brennan, said. He was a technical guy who usually worked with the power company. "I can see evidence of the housing being opened multiple times. The seal has been broken and replaced, but not correctly. Someone with access to utility company equipment did this." "Can you tell how much they inflated my usage?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not without bringing in the power company to do a full forensic analysis, but based on what I am seeing, it is substantial. Your actual usage is probably less than half of what you have been billed." Detective Chen made notes. "We have the video of Patricia Whitmore and an unidentified male at your meter. We have evidence of tampering. Now we need to identify the man and establish the full scope of the conspiracy. Derek, I need you to request all documentation from your utility companies showing your billing history. We need to see the pattern." I spent the rest of that day on the phone with the electric and water companies, requesting detailed billing records going back 2 years. Both companies were cooperative once I mentioned there was a police investigation into meter tampering. They promised to send everything within a week. The neighborhood was buzzing by the next day. Apparently, Patricia had called an emergency HOA board meeting and sent out an email to all residents warning them about a dangerous individual making false accusations against board members. She did not name me directly, but everyone knew who she meant. My mailbox started filling up with anonymous notes. Some were supportive, saying they had also experienced problems with Patricia's board. Others were hostile, calling me a troublemaker who was destroying the community. I kept everything. Every note, every email, every piece of documentation. Gerald said it could all be useful. 4 days after I caught Patricia at my meter, Detective Chen called with an update. "We identified your night visitor. His name is Craig Hoffman. He is a former utility company employee who was fired 3 years ago for falsifying inspection reports. He has been working as an independent contractor since then, doing odd jobs. We brought him in for questioning." "Did he talk?" I asked. He lawyered up immediately, but his attorney is already making noises about a plea deal. "Hoffman knows he is looking at serious time for utility fraud, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. If he testifies against Patricia Whitmore, he might get a reduced sentence. So what happens now? We are building the case. We have enough to arrest Patricia, but we want to make sure we have everything solid before we move. These HOA cases can get complicated because there are often multiple board members involved. We need to know if she was acting alone or if others were complicit." The answer came sooner than expected. The following Monday, I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney, a firm called Sanderson and Associates. The letter was a cease and desist, demanding I stop making defamatory statements about Patricia Whitmore and the HOA board. It threatened legal action if I continued to spread false accusations. I immediately forwarded it to Gerald, who actually laughed when he read it. "They are panicking," he said. "This is a desperate move. They know you have evidence and they are trying to intimidate you into backing down. Do not respond. Let me handle it." Gerald sent back a response that same day. His letter was a masterpiece of legal intimidation. He outlined all the evidence we had, referenced the ongoing police investigation, and stated that if the HOA or its attorneys made any further threats or took any action against me, we would add them to our lawsuit for harassment and witness intimidation. He also demanded the HOA immediately reverse all fines against me and issue a formal apology. 2 days later, Detective Chen called. "We are executing an arrest warrant for Patricia Whitmore this afternoon. I wanted to give you a heads up because this is going to create a lot of neighborhood drama. Stay inside and do not engage with anyone who confronts you." I watched from my living room window at 4:30 that afternoon as 2 unmarked police cars pulled up to Patricia's house 3 streets over. Within 20 minutes, Patricia was led out in handcuffs. She was not wearing her usual put-together outfit. Instead, she was in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair uncombed. She looked smaller and older without her armor of authority. The neighborhood exploded. My phone started ringing off the hook. People I barely knew were calling and texting, demanding to know what was happening. I ignored most of them, but I did respond to Jennifer Morris, a neighbor who had always been friendly and who had mentioned once that she had also experienced problems with Patricia. "I cannot go into details because there is an active investigation," I told Jennifer. "But Patricia was arrested for utility fraud and tampering with my meters. If you have had issues with your bills or with the HOA, you might want to contact the police." "Oh my God," Jennifer said. "My water bill has been insane for the past 4 months. I thought I had a leak, but the plumber could not find anything wrong." "Call Detective Sarah Chen," I said, and I gave her the number. "Tell her everything." Within 2 days, Detective Chen called me back. "We have 3 more homeowners reporting similar issues with unexplained utility spikes and HOA harassment. Your neighbor Jennifer Morris, a guy named Paul Reynolds, and a woman named Linda Wu. This is bigger than we thought. Patricia was not just targeting you." "Why would she do this?" I asked. "What does she gain from driving up people's utility bills? We are not entirely sure yet, but we have a theory. Craig Hoffman is cooperating now. He says Patricia hired him to tamper with meters of homeowners she wanted to force out of the neighborhood. According to Hoffman, Patricia had buyers lined up, investors who were willing to pay above market value for certain properties. She would create problems for the homeowners, make their lives miserable, then offer to buy them out at a discount. The homeowners would sell to her just to escape the harassment, and she would flip the properties to her investor friends at a profit. She has been running this scheme for at least 8 months. I felt sick. How many people? We are still investigating, but it looks like at least 7 homeowners have sold their houses in the past 8 months after experiencing similar patterns of harassment and unexplained problems. Some of them moved out of state, so we are having trouble tracking them all down. But the ones we have talked to all report the same thing: escalating HOA fines, utility bills that skyrocketed for no reason, and eventually Patricia or another board member approaching them with a buyout offer. "That is insane," I said. "How did she think she would get away with it?" "Arrogance, probably. She had power, she had authority, and she thought no one would question her. Plus, the scheme was somewhat sophisticated. By spacing out the targets and involving fake utility issues, it looked like isolated problems rather than a pattern. You caught her because you set up cameras and refused to back down. Most people just want the stress to end, so they take the buyout and leave. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation expanded. Detective Chen and her team executed search warrants on Patricia's home and her personal computer. They found emails between Patricia and 2 other board members, Randall Spencer and Denise Crawford, discussing which properties to target. They found financial records showing Patricia had made over $400,000 flipping houses in the neighborhood after buying them from harassed homeowners at below market prices. Randall and Denise were arrested on conspiracy and fraud charges. Craig Hoffman took a plea deal and agreed to testify against all of them. The utility companies launched their own investigations and discovered that Hoffman had tampered with at least 11 meters in our neighborhood over an 8-month period. My own utility bills were corrected retroactively. The electric company refunded me over $3,000, and the water company refunded nearly $2,000. They also issued formal apologies and implemented new security measures on their meters to prevent future tampering. The HOA itself was in chaos. With 3 of the 5 board members arrested, the remaining 2 members, both of whom claimed they had no knowledge of Patricia's schemes, called an emergency meeting with all homeowners. The meeting was held in the community center on a Wednesday evening in early April, and nearly every resident attended. I went with Gerald Martinez by my side. The atmosphere was tense and angry. People were shouting questions before the meeting even officially started. The 2 remaining board members, Frank Morrison and Susan Palmer, looked overwhelmed as they tried to call the meeting to order. "We want to address the recent arrests and the ongoing investigation," Frank said, his voice shaking slightly. "Susan and I were not aware of any wrongdoing by Patricia, Randall, or Denise. We are cooperating fully with the police." "How could you not know?" someone shouted from the back. "You are on the board. We trusted Patricia," Susan said. "She handled most of the day-to-day operations. She told us she was addressing violations and enforcing the CC and Artiques. We had no reason to question her." "What about the fines, the threats, the harassment?" This was Jennifer Morris, standing up in the front row. "My water bill was through the roof and nobody would help me. I almost sold my house and moved because of the stress." The meeting devolved into chaos for several minutes before Gerald stood up. "May I address the group?" he asked loudly. Frank looked relieved to hand over control. "Please." Gerald stepped forward. "My name is Gerald Martinez, and I represent Derek Thompson. Many of you know Derek has been targeted by Patricia Whitmore and her associates. What you may not know is the extent of the criminal conspiracy that has been operating in this neighborhood. The police have evidence that Patricia, Randall, and Denise were deliberately tampering with utility meters to inflate bills, then using those inflated bills as justification to harass and fine homeowners under false pretenses. The goal was to force people to sell their homes at below market prices, which Patricia would then flip to investors at a profit. This scheme generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal profit and destroyed the peace and security of this community. The room fell silent. "What Derek did by installing cameras and catching Patricia in the act has saved this neighborhood," Gerald continued. "But the damage is significant. The HOA itself could face serious legal liability because these actions were taken under the authority of the board. Every homeowner who was targeted, fined, or harassed may have grounds to sue the HOA for damages. The association's insurance may not cover this because the actions were criminal in nature." "What do we do?" someone asked. You need to remove the remaining board members and elect a completely new board with oversight mechanisms to prevent this from ever happening again, Gerald said. You need to hire an independent auditor to review all HOA finances and actions from the past 2 years. You need to reach out to every homeowner who sold and moved away to inform them of what happened. And you need to cooperate fully with law enforcement. This is going to be a long, difficult process, but it is the only way to restore integrity to this community. Frank and Susan resigned on the spot. A temporary board was elected that night, with Jennifer Morris as interim president. I was asked if I wanted to serve on the board, but I declined. I had no interest in HOA politics. I just wanted to live my life in peace. The criminal case moved forward over the following months. Patricia Whitmore, Randall Spencer, and Denise Crawford were all indicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, utility meter tampering, extortion, and theft by deception. Craig Hoffman, as part of his plea deal, testified against all of them. The trial took place in August at the Maricopa County Superior Court in downtown Phoenix. I was called as a witness and spent an entire day on the stand describing what had happened. I presented the security footage, the threatening letters, the billing records, all of it. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Lewis, walked me through everything step by step. Patricia's defense attorney tried to paint me as a disgruntled homeowner with a vendetta, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw the video of Patricia and Craig at my meter. They heard Craig's testimony about how Patricia had hired him and instructed him on which meters to tamper with. They saw the financial records showing the profits from the house flipping scheme. The trial lasted 3 weeks. In September, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts for all 3 defendants. Patricia Whitmore was sentenced to 8 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution of over $600,000 to the victims. Randall Spencer got 6 years. Denise Crawford, who cooperated more than the others and showed genuine remorse, got 4 years. Craig Hoffman, because of his plea deal and testimony, received 2 years and probation. I attended the sentencing hearing. Patricia stood before the judge and maintained that she had been trying to improve the neighborhood and that she had been misunderstood. She showed no real remorse, even at the end. The judge was not impressed. Mrs. Whitmore, you abused a position of trust and authority to prey on your neighbors for personal profit, the judge said. You caused significant financial and emotional harm to multiple families. The sentence is appropriate and necessary. As the bailiffs led Patricia away, she glanced back at the courtroom. Her eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw nothing but bitterness there. She had never accepted responsibility, and I doubted she ever would. The civil lawsuits followed. I sued the HOA and won a settlement of $75,000 for harassment, emotional distress, and the costs I had incurred fighting back. Jennifer, Paul, Linda, and 3 other targeted homeowners also settled with the HOA for various amounts. The HOA's insurance did end up covering some of the costs, but the association was still left in financial difficulty. The homeowners who had sold and moved away were harder to track down. The new HOA board, with the help of a pro bono legal team, managed to contact 5 of the 7 people who had sold under duress. 2 of them chose not to pursue action because they had moved on with their lives and did not want to relive the trauma. 3 of them joined a class action lawsuit that was still ongoing as of the end of the year. As for me, life slowly returned to normal. My utility bills stabilized at reasonable levels. The new HOA board, led by Jennifer and a group of sensible people who actually cared about the community rather than power, revised the CC and Artiques, to add oversight and accountability measures. They implemented term limits for board members, required financial audits, and created a homeowner grievance committee to handle disputes. I kept my security cameras up and running, just in case. Trust, once broken, is hard to fully restore, but the neighborhood did start to heal. People talked to each other again. Block parties resumed. The atmosphere of fear and suspicion that had hung over Saguaro Springs during Patricia's reign gradually lifted. In December, almost 9 months after that night I caught Patricia at my meter, I hosted a small dinner party. Jennifer and her husband came, along with Paul, Linda, and a few other neighbors who had become friends through the ordeal. We ate, we laughed, and we toasted to justice and to the simple pleasure of living in a community where you do not have to worry about your HOA president sabotaging your utilities. I still cannot believe she thought she would get away with it, Paul said as we sat on my back patio under the desert stars. She probably would have if Derek had not been so stubborn, Jennifer said, raising her glass to me. Most people would have just paid the fines and tried to keep their heads down. Or sold and moved away, which is what she wanted, Linda added. I shrugged. I just got tired of being pushed around, and I got lucky with the cameras. It was not luck, Gerald Martinez said. He had joined us for dinner as well, having become a friend through the whole ordeal. It was persistence and smart thinking. You saw something wrong, you documented it, and you did not back down even when they tried to intimidate you. That is what it takes to fight these things. As the evening wound down and my guests departed, I stood alone in my backyard, looking up at the clear Arizona sky. The lights of Phoenix glowed on the horizon, and the desert air was finally cooling after the brutal heat of summer. My house was mine, truly mine, without threats or harassment hanging over it. My bills were normal. My life was peaceful. I thought about Patricia sitting in a prison cell somewhere, stripped of her power and authority, facing years away from the life she had built on fraud and manipulation. I did not feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, had hurt people deliberately and without remorse in pursuit of profit. The consequences were just, but I did feel grateful. Grateful that I had caught her. Grateful for people like Gerald, Detective Chen, and the neighbors who had supported me. Grateful that the system, despite its flaws, had ultimately worked. Justice had been slow, but it had been real. I went back inside, locked my doors, and checked the feeds from my security cameras one last time before bed. Everything was quiet. Everything was safe. Tomorrow I would get up, make coffee, and work from home just like any other day. The HOA drama was over. The criminals were in prison. Life in Saguaro Springs could finally be what it was supposed to be: ordinary, peaceful, and boring in the best possible way. As I climbed into bed, I realized I had learned something important through all of this. HOA, like any organization with power, require oversight and accountability. When good people stay silent or uninvolved, bad people can take control and cause enormous harm. It is not enough to buy a house and pay your dues and assume everything will be fine. Communities require active participation, vigilance, and the willingness to stand up when something goes wrong. I had stood up, and it had cost me months of stress, thousands of dollars in legal fees, and countless hours of lost sleep. But it had been worth it. Not just for me, but for everyone Patricia had targeted and everyone she would have targeted in the future if she had not been stopped. The next morning, I woke to sunshine streaming through my bedroom window and the sound of birds chirping outside. I made my coffee, sat down at my computer, and checked my email. There was a message from the new HOA board. They were organizing a community cleanup day and asking for volunteers. It was the kind of normal, benign HOA activity that should have been happening all along. I signed up to help. Not because I suddenly loved HOAs or wanted to be deeply involved in neighborhood politics, but because I had learned that communities are built by people who show up and do the work. Good communities do not happen by accident. They require effort and attention and people willing to care. Over the following weeks, the story of what had happened in Saguaro Springs spread beyond our neighborhood. Local news picked it up, and I did a few interviews. A reporter from the Arizona Republic wrote a detailed investigative piece about HOA corruption and how Patricia's case was not isolated. Across the country, there were thousands of HOA disputes every year, many involving abuse of power, financial mismanagement, or outright fraud. The article quoted me saying, "HOAs have enormous power over people's homes and lives, but they often operate with little oversight or accountability. We need better laws and regulations to protect homeowners from corrupt board members." The article generated a lot of discussion. Some people agreed and called for HOA reform. Others defended HOAs as necessary for maintaining property values and community standards. I stayed out of the broader debate. I had told my story, the criminals had been punished, and that was enough for me. In February, almost a full year after I had caught Patricia at my meter, I received a letter from the prison where she was serving her sentence. It was from Patricia herself, handwritten on prison stationery. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was brief. Patricia wrote that she had a lot of time to think about her actions and the harm she had caused. She claimed she had started out with good intentions, wanting to improve the neighborhood and increase property values, but had lost her way. She said she was sorry for what she had done to me and the others. I read the letter twice, trying to determine if the apology was genuine or just another manipulation. In the end, I decided it did not matter. Whether Patricia truly felt remorse or was just going through the motions, it did not change what had happened or the consequences she now faced. I filed the letter away in the folder with all the other documents from the case and did not respond. Spring arrived, bringing warmer temperatures and the vibrant blooms of desert wildflowers. The new HOA board under Jennifer's leadership was functioning well. They had hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations, which removed the temptation for any one person to accumulate too much power. They held regular open meetings where homeowners could voice concerns. They published detailed financial reports every quarter. It was boring, transparent, and exactly what an HOA should be. I continued my life as a software developer, working from home and enjoying the peace I had fought so hard to secure. I dated occasionally, traveled when I could, and spent time with friends and family. The drama of the HOA case faded into memory. Though I never forgot the lessons I had learned. In May, I was contacted by a producer from a true crime podcast who wanted to do an episode about the case. I agreed, figuring that the more people knew about HOA corruption, the better. The episode aired in June and became one of the podcast's most downloaded episodes. I received messages from people around the country who had experienced similar situations with their HOAs. Some had fought back successfully. Others had been forced to move. A few asked for advice on how to handle their own situations. I responded to as many as I could, always giving the same core advice. Document everything, install cameras, hire a lawyer who specializes in HOA disputes, and do not back down if you know you are right. Most importantly, I told them, do not assume the authorities will not help. Report crimes to the police. Report fraud to the relevant agencies. The system is not perfect, but it does work if you engage with it. By the time summer arrived, I felt like I had truly moved on. The case was closed, the sentences had been served or were being served, and life in Saguaro Springs was better than it had been in years. Property values had actually increased once word spread that the corrupt board members had been removed, and the neighborhood was under new, honest management. I threw a 4th of July party, inviting the same group of neighbors who had become friends. We grilled burgers, watched fireworks from my backyard, and celebrated not just American independence but our neighborhood's independence from tyranny and corruption. It was a good day, filled with laughter and the kind of easy companionship that makes a place feel like home. As the fireworks exploded overhead in brilliant cascades of red, white, and blue, I thought about how different my life might have been if I had not installed those cameras, if I had not caught Patricia in the act, if I had simply given up and moved away like she had wanted. I would have lost money, lost my home, and lost my sense of security. And Patricia would have continued her scheme, hurting more people, accumulating more illegal profits, secure in her belief that she was untouchable. But I had not given up. I had fought back and I had won. And while victory had come at a cost, it had been worth every penny, every sleepless night, every moment of stress and uncertainty. Because in the end, standing up for yourself and for what is right matters. It matters in ways both large and small, both immediate and long-lasting. The fireworks finale lit up the night sky, and my friends cheered and applauded. I joined in, feeling genuinely happy and genuinely at peace for the first time in over a year. The nightmare was over. The story had a good ending. And tomorrow, when the sun rose over the desert, I would wake up in my home, free from harassment, free from fraud, free to live my life on my own terms. That is what made it all worthwhile. Not revenge, not vindication, but simply the freedom to exist in my own space without fear. That is what Patricia had tried to take from me and so many others. And that is what we had taken back. One piece of evidence, one day in court, one small victory at a time. As the last firework faded from the sky and the smoke drifted away on the desert breeze, I raised my glass one more time. To justice, I said. To justice, my friends echoed. And in that moment in my backyard in Phoenix, Arizona, surrounded by good people in a neighborhood that had survived its darkest chapter and emerged stronger, I knew that every word of that toast was true. Justice had been served. The guilty had been punished. The community had been restored. And I could finally, truly rest easy in my home. The months that followed were blissfully uneventful. I worked, I lived, I enjoyed the simple pleasures of life without drama. The security cameras remained in place, silent guardians that I checked occasionally, but that mostly recorded nothing more interesting than passing wildlife and the occasional delivery driver. In September, on the anniversary of Patricia's sentencing, I received a call from Detective Chen. "I wanted to let you know that the last of the restitution payments has been processed," she said. "Everyone who was victimized has been compensated to the fullest extent possible. The case is completely closed from a criminal standpoint. The civil suits are still ongoing, but that is out of my hands." "Thank you," I said, "for everything. You did not have to take this case as seriously as you did." "Yes, I did," she said firmly. "Fraud is fraud, whether it is a corporation or an HOA. Nobody gets to abuse their power and hurt people just because they think they are above the law. I am glad we got them, and I am glad you had the courage to report it and see it through." After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while, processing the finality of it. The case was truly over. Patricia and her accomplices were in prison. The victims had been compensated. The neighborhood had healed. There was nothing left to do, no more hearings to attend, no more statements to give, no more anxiety about what might happen next. It was over. and that meant I could truly, finally, move forward. I looked around my living room at the home I had fought so hard to keep. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, every book on the shelf represented a choice I had made, a piece of myself I had put into this space. Patricia had tried to take it all away, had tried to drive me out through harassment and fraud, had tried to profit from my misery. She had failed. I had won. And now, sitting in my home on a quiet September evening with the Phoenix sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I could honestly say that I was happy. Happy with my home, happy with my neighborhood, happy with my life. The struggle had been worth it. The fight had been necessary. And the victory, hard-won and well-earned, tasted sweet. I got up and went to the kitchen to pour myself a drink. Through the window, I could see my neighbors going about their evening routines. Kids playing in yards, people walking dogs, normal, peaceful suburban life, the way it should be. The way it would have been all along if Patricia had not twisted her authority into a weapon. But she had, and we had stopped her, and now everything was as it should be. I took my drink out to the back patio and settled into my favorite chair. The desert air was cooling as night approached, comfortable and clean. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the sound of children laughing. This was my home. This was my life. And nobody, not Patricia Whitmore or anyone else, would ever take it from me again. I had learned to stand up for myself, to fight when fighting was necessary, to persist when persistence was required. Those lessons would stay with me forever, shaping how I approached challenges and conflicts in all areas of my life. I had discovered reserves of strength and stubbornness I had not known I possessed. I had learned that ordinary people can fight back against corruption and win if they are willing to endure the struggle. Most importantly, I had learned that home is worth fighting for. Not just the physical structure, but the sense of security and belonging that comes with having a place that is truly yours. Patricia had tried to destroy that, and she had failed. The house still stood. I still lived here. And I would continue to live here, peacefully and happily, for as long as I chose. As darkness fell completely and the stars shone bright in the clear desert sky, I finished my drink and went back inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new experiences. But tonight, I would sleep soundly in my own bed, in my own home, secure in the knowledge that justice had been done and the nightmare was truly over. The HOA story had ended. My story continued. And that, I thought as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, was exactly how it should be.